Yeah, I'll be right back. All right. So we're going to focus on the budget, which is exciting, and get paid.
Yes, Jay. So let me copy and paste these notes that we did on the budget team of before. All right. So non-priority steps here. Okay, copying and pasting.
And also, what was our desired outcome here?
Excuse me?
Understanding policies and steps to do nonprofit.
So it's clear we need to have new proposals. Okay, so point one, we have to have new POPs, right?
Well, that's what we talked about. We don't have to have new POPs, but we talked about it. Also, it's good to note that with the new umbrella showcase website plan, we are obviously much more nonprofit than we were with this SVG. Because SVG was not a nonprofit, whereas obviously the umbrella showcase website is all nonprofit.
Okay. Well, we assumed there should be a new POPs for the for-profit budget, non-profit budget, different POP.
Well, that was one of the options that we talked about. That would be an easier option because of SVG. So now that SVG is no longer the only thing we're focused on, it's now a lot more flexible.
Yes. All right, so we can agree that we are all in agreement that there should be POPs specifically for the CCC budget.
I don't know. I'm just saying it's a perfectly fine option. You can do it that way.
Right. So for me as well, Joyce, what do you think?
What is required? What's required is there does need to be a nonprofit budget that's approved by the nonprofit. That is obviously required. But other than that, there's no policy that says that we have to have a separate pot for every single entity.
Yeah, exactly. This budget is not. It's not in the. It's the CCC board that approves this budget. It's not the HR board.
No, it is the HR board.
All right. Instead of the team agreement that we usually have for the for-profit budget, we'd also have the CCC board that needs to approve it.
Everything's exactly the same. There's no difference.
Okay.
It's just that because it goes through the nonprofit, it legally relates to the nonprofit board. That's it.
Yes. Perfect.
The nonprofit reviews all budgets. We don't have a nonprofit budget for the board to review.
All right.
So we could easily create one budget that was for the entire organization for both the for-profit and nonprofit sides, and then send that to the nonprofit board. As long as they approved it, it would be fine. Then they verified it.
I think it's better to have two separated budgets. So the second was the process workflow. So we created a CCC HR monthly budget process spreadsheet, responsibility organizing. It's linked here. And so we want to review the responsibility for this process. So you say you're going to be exactly the same?
This is where I disagree. Like, it's not a separate process for the CCC HR monthly budget. It's the same budget process. Like, they're not two separate budget processes. Right? If we need to update our existing budget process, we can, but we're not doing two separate budget processes. There's one budget process for our team. Right? Our team, we're a multi-organizational entity, right? Are we on the same page on that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we can create one budget process that will address our team's budget needs. Period. If we want to update the existing process, we can. We are absolutely not having two totally separate budget processes. It's unnecessary and not applicable. Right? So eventually we would have like a token budget, right? It's very important that eventually we have a token budget, right? But the token budget should still be part of the budget process.
Correct. Okay, I get it. It makes perfectly sense, and I like it.
Right? So basically right now there's three sub-budgets. There's the for-profit budget, the non-profit budget, and the token budget, right? All three of which are equally important, all need to be done. But right now we just prioritize the for-profit budget. We just never did the other. And again, like, we can already pay people out of the money. You guys understand that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can easily pay like whatever percentage. I mean, we barely worked on SVG this particular last couple weeks, right? Ever since we changed the trajectory model, we've been working on nonprofit overall arching vortex, cutting edge, community collaborative models and work, right? None of it is for profit, right? It's all based on the social profit model. So it's just good to note that we can already pay Alberto out of the nonprofit. Like, there's nothing that prevents us from doing it. And the same with Joyce and Mamoon and everybody. Anyone who's working on, once you start working on the nonprofit taxes, we can track that. Working on for-profit taxes, we can't really pay people out of the nonprofit to work on for-profit taxes. We can't do that. Get it?
Yeah, get it.
Yeah. So it's all pretty flexible, especially now that we're in the whole overall, the website, right? We have this new umbrella showcase website. 75% of all the showcase websites that we want to talk about there are going to be nonprofit. 90% of everything is already nonprofit, because even SVG, a whole percentage of that is already nonprofit. So I think overall, we might not even need a separate page for CCC. All we need to do is just like clarify where people are getting paid from.
Okay. So, and how do we understand that from the tracking hours?
Well, I gave an example. Like, if you're working on nonprofit taxes, obviously it's nonprofit. But if you're working on for-profit taxes, obviously that's for-profit, right?
Okay, so people would be required to.
But even then, it's a little flexible, because even our for-profit is owned 90% by the nonprofit. So even that has flexibility,
All right, so all right. So for example, let's make an example, right? So I have my for-profit POP, and then I create my non-profit POP. All right. So in total, with these two POPs, if my proposal for the non-profit budget passes, I would have 24 hours. 24 times 7.45 times 30 times 4. So my total new pay per month would be 715.2. All right. So how do we establish how much? If, for example, I work hours for this base pay, it's automatic that the maximum amount can come from the nonprofit and the other amount comes from the for profit, or no?
Well, again, as I said before, like with the new model that we have, specifically doing the the Umbrella Showcase website is social profit, right? It's social profit, primarily nonprofit. Are we on the same page on that?
Yeah, we are on the
So
same page.
a prime trajectory and the whole direction we're going and everything we're doing is primarily nonprofit at this point. So it might make sense that the easiest thing to do is simply to get, focused on, I'll go down to line 55. A simple method could be just, a single line in budget, column, budget that estimates amount of funds from non-profit and for-profit sides, right? So for example, J might be, $500 nonprofit, or here we could say for-profit, right? So nonprofit and then for-profit. So you have workers, so you got Jay, Alberto, Joyce, Stacy, A, Moon. Okay. So maybe Jay is like $500 from for-profit, $250 from profit. Alberto's like I don't know, $500, $250, right?
No, it's the opposite. 260. It would be 268 here and 447 here. No, correct. Sorry. Yeah, no, I'm making confusion. 268.
So Joyce, I don't know Joyce's situation, but maybe it's like, something like that. Stacy is going to be, her 420 and 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
Might be 0 and 300. Mamoon might be 0 and 200, right? So, I mean, it just depends on how we want to set it up and how much money is there, et cetera, et cetera. But with this model, you only need one pop. This simple model.
Okay, so we would update our POP saying how much for the for-profit and how much for the non-profit?
No, we would update the budget to say how much is coming from the nonprofit, how much of the for-profit, because it doesn't matter. Like the worker just is asking for an amount of money. It doesn't matter where the money's coming from.
Okay, POP is the same. It's the same, but the worker. So Jay, how do we establish this non-profit or for-profit?
Well, this could be one way. So by putting together this, having the nonprofit budget and the for-profit budget side by side, when the HR board is approving it, they're basically approving the whole budget, right? When the nonprofit board is reviewing it, they are only reviewing the nonprofit side. That make sense?
Yeah, but how do the budget workers? Okay, so the POP is only one now. We don't need a new POP for the nonprofit budget. So Alberto, it's in total would be 715. How can we, when we do the budget, how do we understand how much of this 715 we allocate to the nonprofit?
All right. So I think here's a good way to do it, right? So I'm going to go down to line 70. So let's say work, hours, responsibilities, and priorities, right? So you could say, okay, here you have main sessions. Here you've got budget. Here you've got payroll. Here you've got, you know, umbrella took its website. Here you have bills. Here you've got what?
Like, for example, there's many things that overlaps, like tactical ops.
Right. Okay. So then you can say here non-profit. Yeah. So here, yeah, tactical ops, right? So then you have a non-profit, estimated non-profit percentage, and then you have estimated for-profit percentage, right? So then you could say, okay, and then technically speaking, you could also have the trust, right? But we're not worrying about the trust right now. Okay, so main sessions. What percentage of our main session is nonprofit versus for-profit? I would say our main sessions are like 75% nonprofit, 25% for-profit. Our budget, you could say, okay, we're doing 2 budgets. Each of our budgets, half of our budget's for-profit, half of our budget's nonprofit. Okay, the payroll. Okay, if we're doing 2 payrolls plus the token payroll and everything, maybe it's 75% nonprofit, 25% for-profit. Umbrella.
We would only do, wait, the payrolls would be the same up to a point. For the accounting, then they would split. The accounting would the only thing that would change, right? Because if we're making this, we have only one pop. The payroll is why do we need 2 payrolls?
There's not 2 payrolls. I'm just saying of the payroll time, right? So this is work time, right? So the work time that you're putting in, what percentage of that work time on the payroll would represent nonprofit work? What percentage would represent for-profit work?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you could say nonprofit / social profit / trust, right? All related, right? So anyways, the point is that the nonprofit percentage of the budget could be looked at 50-50, right? Maybe the most of our main session time is spent on nonprofit work, right? Bills could be 10% of bills are currently nonprofit, and then 90% of bills are for-profit, right? Investment, 0% of our investment time is nonprofit, right? 100% is all for-profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tactical ops. I mean, I would say this is similar to some of these other ones where, like, most of the work that we do is all nonprofit. So the tactical ops and oversight is all nonprofit as well, So in this way, you can kind of get an estimate of what percentage you have for each worker in relationship to their work time. So in this case, it's 54% nonprofit to 46% for-profit.
All right. So this implies that all workers automatically are included in both budgets.
No, not at all.
Why not?
Because it's done per worker. Each worker can have a different percentage breakdown. And also, Stacy's only getting paid by the nonprofit.
Everybody has budget and payroll, right? In their responsibility organizing.
Yeah, but a lot of people do work on budget and payroll, even though it's there. So this would be like you would want to estimate actual work hours, right? Estimate actual work hours. Right? Anyway, I'll just give you an example of one way to do this, like and then you could just break down the percentages for each worker of like how much work they put in nonprofit, how much they put in the for-profit side, and then it would be easy to break that down in relationship to the budget, right? But some workers you could still do separate pops or whatever as well. It's definitely applicable to do a separate pop. So the main reason you do a separate pop, for example, is like for me getting hired. So Jay getting hired by nonprofit would create an employee W-2, which would be a new position. So as a new position, it might make sense that I would get a separate budget and a separate pop for my role. Whereas if we're just doing payroll, maybe it's just not applicable to anyone else who's not taking on like an actual, separate role. Like if you're not an actual employee, then maybe it doesn't really matter because you just have one worker position, which is your normal worker position. Whereas with me, it's possible eventually I might get 2 worker positions where I have a separate worker position for the nonprofit employee versus like it'd be a legal distinction. Does that make sense? But either way, it still doesn't matter in terms of the budget. The budget can just be the budget.
Yeah. So the way that I was thinking to do this was, I mean, this is something that okay we can see, but the way that I was thinking to do it was the following, right? So we would have, for example, I take myself again as example, right? Alberto has a for-profit POP of 268, and then it has a non-profit POP of 447. Then the tracking hour stays the same. All right. So we go and we see the base upfront pay for Alberto for that month equals.
Isn't it opposite? Isn't it the opposite way around? Yeah, it's 447 nonprofit, 268 for profit. Okay, good. Just making sure.
Yeah. Exactly. So then, so then Alberto base upfront pay for the month would come at 1750. Let's say I do all my hours. All right. So automatically we pay the 715. 268 is the cap for the. We start with the for profit. We go to the cap. Okay, 268 comes for the for profit, and then the rest comes for the non-profit.
I think you're doing it the other way around because our non-profit budget is much easier to deal with. Our for-profit budget is the problem. So we want to spend as little. The whole point of this entire process is to reduce the for-profit budget to be as small as possible. That makes sense?
Yeah, but I mean, we still want to pay something for the non-profit, and we are flexible, but still, we know that probably Alberto didn't do 100% of. So what happens if my pay is less? So maybe we can do something like this. So 117. So we have percentages, right? So this is my percentage on the non-profit side, on the for-profit side, and this is my percentage for the non-profit side. So we have these percentages for each worker if they have a approved POP in the. So we know that of this 715, 37.48 will come for the for-profit, and 62.52 will come from the for-profit. So if, for example, for 1 month my budget is only 300, and we know that obviously I didn't work 100% on the non-profit, so it's not really correct to pay me only from the non-profit. We know that this 300 would be split immediately with these percentages. Right.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. I like it. I like just having the percentages to break it down. And of course, that's the estimated. Like if 1 month we're spending like so much of your time, like
because we're flexible.
All is all nonprofit taxes. It's like that month you can just pay the entire payroll from the nonprofit. You know.
Yeah, I mean, but what I think is that
50% of someone's time is coming from one direction, like the nonprofit side. It's just we just pay them on the nonprofit side. If 90% is on the for-profit side, or even just a small amount, like for example, Moth, we just pay Moth from the for-profit side. It doesn't matter, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this we can review, but what we assume is that it will be balanced out throughout the year. Like maybe 1 month. Probably Alberto didn't work so much for the for-profit or so much for the non-profit, but then the next month probably he will work more on that. So we assume that for the whole year this will balance out to make things easy if you're flexible. And we can always review that if we say, okay, this doesn't make sense because there is workers that are getting paid from the non-profit, while we are obviously seeing that they're not doing any non-profit work, right? But at the moment, it's very difficult to separate, and I think it would be a lot of work to separate the actual hours, right? So we would just say, all right, so do you have a POP approved in the nonprofit budget? Yes. How much is that in your overall pay? Is 62.52%. All right, so this is how we will now start to pay you, and we're considering that probably, assuming that the work will balance out over the year.
Yeah, I think that's correct. Like it'll just balance out over the course of the year as needed. And overall, we know that the for-profit has been paying the nonprofit wages for years and years. So we
Also, yeah.
probably paid tens of thousands of dollars of donations to the nonprofit that we could document and have fine. So I think overall, it's just we're going to be fine either way.
The only thing that this option would obviously imply, I mean, we can still have only one budget, right? Can all go into the one budget, which makes sense, right? So like we would have, for example, Alberto Pay is 715, and then next to it we would have the separations, right? So we would have these two separations in the budget, right? How much is the for profit and how much is the non-profit? And the only thing is that this implies obviously a pop for the non-profit. I mean, you need to be because, for example, if we know that Moth is not assigned, is not doing any non-profit work, we wouldn't at the beginning approve him in the non-profit budget. Or if we approve him, we know that we need to assign him non-profit work. I mean, everybody is free to make a proposal to the non-profit budget, obviously.
Well, we just determined that based on our proposal for the budget. Like we're just proposing how much of the budget we think needs to come out of the nonprofit, and then we basically get that approved by the nonprofit. So and if we want to, we could do separate pops, whatever we need to do to make it clear. And obviously all this needs to go through Mel, and she needs to approve it because she's on the board as well. And then obviously all this needs to go through the new board members, which I think is the priority. Like I think this is all great and all, but none of this matters. All that matters is what can be approved.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree, and I think it's easier also for the board if they have a very clear proposals just for the non-profit budget. I don't know. What do you think?
If that's what we want to do, we can certainly create a nonprofit budget that only includes our nonprofit support.
Yeah, it's not creating a nonprofit budget. I mean, it's updating the process to create like a column for the nonprofit.
Or yeah, whatever we want to do, it's fine.
Yeah, but this would imply pops that are just for the nonprofit.
Oh no, you don't have to do that, but we can definitely do that for individuals and people that we want to, but it's just not required.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense to have only one pop, right? Because everybody that starts working automatically will do work for the nonprofit. It's not possible that they can work only on the for-profit side.
Well, the policy on having multiple organizational pops, right? So if you think about the policy, it's a policy on multi-organizational pops, right? So having more than one pop. So the reason for this, there needs to be a reason, really a legal reason, right? A legal reason to do so, right? So this would involve like multiple teams. If you're on multiple teams, right? Most importantly, separate budget, right? So if you are in a separate budget, then it makes sense it would be a separate pop. That makes sense in terms of like the budget determines the need to create a separate pop. It's not necessarily the entity. So for example, the primary budget is currently the half-year Jurison budget. Okay, that makes sense? So that all the money is coming from the same place, all the Jurison budget, and that is the primary budget. There's not really a separate budget, right? But let's say we took on a new client, and SVG got a new client. We're getting like, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000 a month from this new client. That would create a separate budget with different decision making over that money because it would come from a different place, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. So maybe we could just take the SVG client from that particular client, And if I was doing it and it was mainly the client came from me and no one else was working on it, it could just go right into the Jurison budget or whatever. But the point is that if it was going to be a separate budget, that is where you start looking at having separate pops coming from separate budgets, but there still needs to be some sort of legal reason to create a separate pop. So before, the legal reason was because SVG was no longer the normal FQN that we were working on before, that it was mainly focused on this for-profit work and the for-profit clients.
But it didn't make sense.
But we decided to go not do that anymore. So there's no longer a specific legal
Yes.
reason to do so. Whereas this here, like me having an employee, being an employee within the nonprofit might create a legal reason to have a separate pop that defines my legally established role as a executive officer of the nonprofit, as opposed to just a general, president of the board, like general board member, which is what I am now, right? So that could be applicable, but even then, it's still flexible. It's like, what we need to do is just have a budget so that everyone knows how much they're getting paid. From there, we can work out details.
Okay. So let's. I just want to. I mean, this has nothing to do now. All right, but I mean, what you just said about SVG client made me think about something. All right, so let's say that for 1 month, right, Alberto works 100% for the nonprofit, okay, and Joyce works 100% for the for-profit, right? But it just makes sense that we have one proposal for everybody, because Alberto might have been able to work 100% on the nonprofit because Joyce worked 100% on the for-profit. So the umbrella is always the worker cooperatives, right? Yeah. So it's very. I think it's wrong to separate the. I mean, we should have just one. All right. So we should make it very, very easy now. For you, Jay, is a different situation. Of course, it's something that also we have these legal things that need to be taken in account. But for us workers, I think what we should do should be very easy. So Alberto budget is 500, right? And we just decide, all right, also because what you said about the for-profit having paid for the employee, we just decide what is the percentage of the HR, but the HR budget is 1, all right? We just add the percentage that will be paid from the non-profit and the percentage for the for-profit. We could be 75-25. I think it makes perfectly sense. Without being there to actually analyze the work that has been done by Alberto on the non-profit, because maybe Alberto did so much work on the non-profit because Joyce was so good in doing work for the for-profit that Alberto then didn't have to work on, right? So we are a team. So if I have free time to be working on the non-profit, is because somebody else is actually doing work for the for-profit, right? So it always in the end blends together. So we could do it very, very easy here, right? For you, obviously, it's different, Jay, because you would be a paid board member on CCC board, and that needs to be addressed in a different way. But for us, and also for your worker, this would apply to your worker, to your FQN worker pay, right? Which is 748. Now it's less, okay, 500, but still, this then automatically this pay would come 75% from the nonprofit and 25% from the nonprofit for all the workers. I think it just makes sense like this, right? Because we're a team and
all the workers.
Yeah, all the workers. I think that we just have one HR budget, and what needs to be approved is how much.
What you said before was that if Joyce does 100% of the work on the for-profit and you do 100% of your work on the nonprofit, payroll is a million times simpler just paying one person out of the for-profit and then the other person out of the nonprofit, because that halves the number of transactions. Like, it wouldn't make any sense to go out of our way to double the number of transactions for no reason.
Yeah, but it's not for no reason, because it's a lot more complicated than, to actually understand how much somebody worked on the for-profit and how much somebody worked on the nonprofit.
It's really not that complicated. It can be estimated, but the point that what you're doing is you're saying that the nonprofit would pay the worker co-op. Now, the worker co-op would be paid separately, and then the budget from the worker co-op would go out to all the workers. And so the nonprofit would be paying the worker co-op. The problem with that is that the worker co-op is not an organization, it's a MO, right? So it just doesn't work that way, because we have a nonprofit branch and we have a for-profit branch, so it's the same problem internal in the co-op, right? The worker co-op has a nonprofit branch, and we're paying everybody out of the nonprofit branch of the worker co-op, as well as the for-profit branch of the co-op, right? It's a MO. So I don't, that we just want to simplify the payroll as much as possible. And for me, it's easier that 1 month you're getting paid 100% from the nonprofit, and then the next month you get paid 100% from the for-profit. That is an easier way to do it for the payroll. Like Stacy is 100% getting paid by the nonprofit. Like, she is not approved in the for-profit budget, period. Right? Like, I don't know.
She's not approved. She's not approved in any budget. She's just a temporary worker, right? So
the nonprofit budget. See, the temporary worker approved the nonprofit budget for the temporary for the month, right? Speaking of that, what is the deadline when she stops getting paid? February 27th is the deadline for the budget.
February 27th. Yeah. Yeah, February 27th.
Yeah. First quarter month.
So then I think
Happy Unified Pay Visit.
I don't know.
Please, Happy Peace Unified Pay Visit. I need to move the tab.
Okay, one second. Hold on one second. All right. Hi. I don't know, Jay. I mean, we that's what this brings back to the different POPs. Then we have a POP for, you would be approved in the nonprofit budget for a proposal, and then we can see in the payrolls then how to pay that, or I don't know.
Is that a question?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a question. I don't know what do you think is the best way?
Yeah. Jay said 1 month is non-profit.
Go for it, Joyce.
Yeah, Jay saying that 1 month, we get our payment from the non-profit, and then the next month the for-profit. He said.
Yeah, but so what does this mean? That 1 month we just do the HR budget?
That's one option. I said that there's lots of different options that we can do.
Yeah, that's one option.
That's just one option, right? So there's many different ways that we could do it. Like, that for me, that's not really of concern. Like, there's ways we can already pay people out of the nonprofit. Yeah. There's ways we can already pay people out of the nonprofit. There's ways that we can add the nonprofit to the budget. We can do the percentage model, right? We can do the separate POPs. We can do actual separate spreadsheet, however we want to set it up. The problem is that there's no board and we're not doing the recruitment. That's the problem. I got to go take a 5-minute break. I'll be back soon. Okay.
All right.